It is a beautiful day from where I'm sitting. I can just see the trees start to bloom. And around our area, we've just got all this gorgeous creation. We've got the bunnies hopping, which of course our dogs just love. And everyone in the neighborhood can hear when the bunnies are hopping, in fact, because of Sasha and Libby. It is remarkable to me that there are many people that look around and see nothing more than randomly evolved chance and so many different, microorganisms that just so happen to work together and just so happen to build the right codes and develop the right parts that suddenly, poof, we're all here in this grand cosmic accident. Aren't we lucky? And
I think you just quoted Paul from Romans.
really,
We are
isn't that
we are without
crazy?
excuse.
Oh,
Look around.
it's amazing to see that. And I have on the line with me today a man that I would say the secular world would tell you doesn't exist. That is a man who is an accomplished scientist, researcher, many decades in the realm of cancer research as an oncologist, very highly trained at both Harvard and Johns Hopkins, and is also, believe it or not, a Christian. A man who believes that we are more than just mere accidents of time and chance, but that we do actually have a purpose and that there is a design behind this crazy world. And lo and behold, science actually might help us understand that. So I'd love to introduce you and the FaithWorks Live audience to Dr. Bill West. It's a pleasure to have you on with us, sir.
It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Well, and you've just written a book about this whole, I would guess, the myth that science contradicts God or that science can't also complement an understanding of faith, and it's called Sacred Science. And so we'll delve into some of what you've learned through your many years of research and also life as a disciple of Jesus. Where does this myth come from, other than, do you believe that there are people that decide there isn't a God and then kind of support that bias? Or do you believe that there are folks that are just looking for something and they just haven't found what they're looking for? How do you think that myth has become so pervasive in our culture?
I was really motivated to write this book by an article I read probably 4 or 5 years ago about the rising proportion of nuns. And I don't mean Catholic nuns. I mean NONES.
Right. Ends. They check none in the religion
They
box.
check none. And if you look a little deeper, the excuse they use is they've moved on to science. So then
Mm,
that raised the question in my mind, what science are they looking at?
right.
Therefore, I took it upon myself just as a project to review what we know about science, how this universe was created. We actually know a surprising quite a bit of the tools God used to build this universe. And I began to realize that science is actually a, uh, a revelation of God.
Mm.
I think most people think of it as something independent of faith. It's very much confirming of faith. We have a scriptural revolution, and I think we have a science revelation.
Yeah, and that's amazing to me. I think that makes so much sense. Like I said, I'm not trying to be overly snarky here, but I'm incredulous to look around me at all of the amazing things. I mean, even if you just look in the mirror, look at the way our eyes operate. Look even just a cursory glance of our fingerprints. If you
Yes,
study DNA, Google DNA for like zero
yes,
point 0.10 seconds, and
yes.
you realize the complexity that's there and the design that's there and all the elements that have to work together. To me, I'm incredulous that the old bromide that I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Essentially, I don't see how you can look at anything other than the intentional design behind the universe and say, I wonder what mind
You know,
created this.
you know, our, our
I wonder why I'm here.
our sun is up there right now burning 600 billion pounds of hydrogen per second. And the amazing thing is every bit of that hydrogen, that fuel, was created in the first 20 minutes
Mm.
of existence in the brand new baby universe. God put together the impulses. They were able to empower 50 billion trillion stars. And we're now living in the perfect spot close to that star on a perfect Earth. And none of that's an accident.
Oh, that's amazing. Can I ask how we know that? Can you give a just maybe in layman's terms some details as to how we know some of these things now that maybe we didn't 50 or 100 years ago?
Well, gosh, science has made so much progress. But in the first third of my book, in Sacred Science, I outlined the 8 blueprints that were necessary for the universe to exist. And you're familiar with many of them. E equals mc squared. energy and matter are the same thing. They're different forms of the same thing. And so when this tremendous amount of light emerged, uh, colliding with each other, these photons began to create what are going to make atoms. We're made of atoms. So we see the conversion of energy into matter, which will someday become us.
Mm.
But to realize that in 15, 20 minutes, a source of fuel for 50 billion trillion stars, including our sun burning 600 billion pounds of hydrogen per second, was created
Wow.
in that brief period of time. And I can tell you, in addition to E equals MC squared, uh, there was another wonderful thing called the Higgs field. Have you ever heard of the Higgs field? Yes. It's what makes the universe physical. And
Hmm.
so as these particles, light has no mass, so it's not going to cooperate very well together. So you have to have mass to slow down and begin to form atoms and to go on to molecules and eventually go into DNA. Uh, and so instantly the universe was filled with this field that gave mass to these would-be atoms.
Hmm.
And I just, it's miraculous. And actually, if you look back at when that was discovered, it wasn't very well received by the scientists because it really does look like a miracle.
Hmm.
The
Wow.
main article was written about it was The Beauty and the Beast. The beauty were these particles that you could say, well, maybe they just fractured out of nothingness. But then you had to have this beast, this field that made those particles physical and made our universe physical and made it
Hmm.
possible for stars and planets and trees and people to exist.
Wow. You know what that reminds me of is the cosmic understatement in Genesis 1 when it just describes God's creation. It says, and he made the stars also. And I'm
That's
like, that's
right. Yeah.
it? Skipping out the details here.
Well,
That's amazing.
what I love about Genesis 1 is that there in the beginning, there's a beginning. The greatest scientists of the 1900s didn't believe there was a beginning. Einstein didn't
Hmm.
believe there was a beginning. In the beginning, one big thing right, and light, a second wonderful thing right. So I read and I wonder, 600 years before Jesus, the Holy Spirit was inspiring this author
Hmm.
to recognize there was a beginning, and that beginning involved an incredible amount of light. And now we know through science how that light got converted into physical things
Yeah.
and eventually created the earth and us.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of like the ontological argument of the first cause, for example, that everything that exists must have come from somewhere. They must have been the beginning. And then,
Yes,
I mean, just in pure rhetorical terms, if you have a big bang, where did all of the gases, where did all of those elements, where did the mass, where did all of that come from? And well, in my experience, when I talk to people about that, eventually they'll just start outsourcing things. They'll say, well, we don't know, or it took a lot longer to evolve. Like time becomes a kind of a gap filler for a lot of evolutionists. For example, they'll say, well, it took more time than we originally thought. And eventually I remember seeing a debate. It may have been the Bill Nye debate with Ken Ham, although I can't quite I think it was. But we were asked about the origins of the universe, and eventually he proposed that there might have been life from other planets, basically extraterrestrial life that came and seeded this planet where we are now, that all of that had to come from some kind of mind. And I'm like, okay, so now we're proposing aliens. Like
that's
that
right.
doesn't seem like a scientific explanation to me. It just sounds like you're trying to come up with any reason other than there was a God in the beginning. Now,
Yes.
maybe I'm reducing that too much, but I don't know. It seems like there are so many brilliant scientific minds that are doing anything other than look at the evidence and say, well, there's a good possibility that there could be this creator God. I don't know if there's just that block or that bias. And I readily admit that I do believe that there's a creator God. I believe in his son, Jesus Christ. And that because of him, because he lives, we also shall live. Hallelujah. That's firmly where I stand.
Right.
And I don't
Yes.
pretend to be a scientist, but I do think that we should ask these basic questions and that we should follow where the evidence leads. And I'm concerned that a lot of people are turning towards, like you said, scientism as essentially just like another religion, a pseudo form of humanistic kind of religion, and that it's actually detracting not only from it's not only a spiritual danger, but it's also really getting in the way of their research and their science if they're not being open-minded enough to what the logical explanation of the evidence.
You're right. 60% of scientists are believers.
Hmm.
But there's this
That is,
credo.
could you say that again? Because I think that would take a lot of people by surprise.
6 out of 10 scientists are believers.
Wow.
Uh, but there is this credo in the field: don't give God a foot in the door. And
Hmm.
the reason is, if you begin to explain something as, okay, God did it, then you may not dig deeper and really try to understand it. And I think that was true probably back in the 1900s. We're so much further down the road today. We really have, and I'm blessed because I've been reading science all my life. I was able to personally go and look at the discoveries that have been made by science. E equal MC squared that's Einstein, out of 1905. But this Higgs field just fascinates me, and I want to make an important point about it. How was it discovered? Peter Higgs looks at an equation on a piece of paper. It's a mystery, this mass. Where did we get it? And he looked at this equation and said, if this field existed, it would explain the mystery of mass. So then my question is, where does that equation spend eternity? It
Hmm.
obviously came forth at the moment of creation, which then takes us back to the whole concept of a higher dimension with libraries of math. I mean, everything in this universe is mathematical. And I would also say, if there's a library for math in a higher dimension, there's a library for life, for
Hmm.
genes and proteins. So you really begin to get an idea of how God set everything up
Yeah.
so that it would um, track according to his wishes, and it has.
Mhm.
And how blessed are we to be the one creature created in his image that we can have this conversation.
Yeah. Amen. And I'm thinking of Psalm 104, that how blessed are the works of your hands, Lord. How wondrous is the sum of your thoughts. Just looking all around at creation. And then David spends this whole like praise song about the
Yeah.
creation of the world and the many creatures and how they are powerful and mighty and wondrous, and yet they all do exactly as you told them to do. They're
Yes.
all designed exactly as you crafted them, Lord. And that our minds can't even fathom. Like, we're still figuring out these many mysteries, things like microbiology, for example, which is still a fairly new science and developing science. And we're looking at things that, astrophysics, that look at these immense spaces, just almost unfathomable spaces, to the very tiny, minutest particles of cells and atoms. And every single place we can see God's fingerprint if we look for it. Now, I understand the perception that you don't want to take the easy out, basically, that if you just say, okay, well,
That's
God
right.
did it, and then we're not asking any questions. But in my experience, looking at amazing scientists like Dr. Bill West, like Richard Boyle throughout history, Isaac Newton, through James Clerk Maxwell, I mean, Michael Faraday, all of these are people that attributed their amazing discoveries about the life in the universe to their faith in God, and that allowed them to look for an orderly way. Because in my mind, if we're all just like randomly evolved cosmic accidents, then why would we expect to find order? Why would we
That's right.
expect that things would operate in an orderly and predictable way such
It,
that
it,
experiments would even make sense in the first place?
it was all working beautifully. Newton was the first one to write his findings in an equation for gravity. But then along comes Darwin.
Hmm.
And bless his heart, he just simply blew it. He looked about, he did the best he could. He didn't know what a gene was, he had no idea. So he basically described how to make a better sheep and a better pig, uh, and nothing about the true origin of a new species. A good example, going from to bilaterality, to symmetry, to lobsters that have claws on both sides, to eyes. And all these things just show up in the deep ocean. Uh, and now we know they're being fed from libraries in God's domain uh, to appear. And we spent billions of dollars trying to figure out where they came from. And I think the answer is just like the Higgs equation. And where did that equation come from?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so did the genes and the sequences for all this wonderful life that has appeared in succession.
Dr. Bill West is our esteemed guest today, accomplished scientist, a doctor, cancer researcher, and he has written a book called Sacred Science. I will link to that down below as well, so you can get your hands on a copy and be armed with the evidence, I would say, that far from science and God being incompatible or opposed to one another, they actually go hand in hand. In fact, we can say science, I dare say, science is the search for God in this universe, in his creation. And Dr. West, I wonder if I could turn to your expertise in fighting cancer, treating cancer. For decades, much of your life has been spent in that area. And that is something that, as we look at some of these horrible diseases and maladies that we see around us in the universe, there are many people who are, I mean, it's hard to imagine someone who isn't touched by cancer, unfortunately,
Yes.
in this day. And so when they hear me talk about things like how well God created the universe and how wonderfully our bodies operate, and then they say, yeah, but I've been diagnosed with cancer, isn't that an
Yes.
argument against a good creation? Or isn't this a major flaw in this machine, an argument against that design? And while my
We
heart breaks for anyone in that situation, please hear my heart that that's I'm so horribly sorry that you're going through such a season. I would love to hear your answer and your response to how things like cancer factor into our understanding of God creating and guiding the universe.
Well, we replicate our DNA 1 trillion times a day. Today, you're going to make your DNA 1 trillion times over. And
Wow.
imagine, I'm 76, no, not sorry, I'm 77 years old. And so far it's worked. And every day, I mean, 1 trillion times
Wow.
regenerating that DNA. God gave us free will. I know that's kind of sounds like a cheap excuse, but there is free will, and mutations happen. And now in the modern day, we have the ability to read the DNA. It's called sequencing. There's only 4 letters, ACTG.
Mm.
Each cell in our body has a sentence 3 billion letters long. And so we can now sequence A, T, C, C, D, and see what's wrong. And in particular in cancer now, we found many a mutation. And the progress in treating cancer has been twofold. One is understanding the mutations. Do we have a drug that can block the activity of that broken gene? And then we're understanding the immune system. We have this most incredible immune system where we're constantly, our bodies are surveying for abnormal cells, moving them off stage if they're trying to become malignant. Uh, and so a lot of what we're doing in modern cancer care is immune therapy. A good cancer cell has learned how to give the immune system a handshake. I'm okay.
Mm.
I'm supposed to be here. So
Yeah.
we have drugs now that unblock that handshake. And all of a sudden the T cell goes, oh, no, you're not supposed to be here. And a T cell will kill a cancer cell in a microsecond.
Mm.
It's no match if we can just unleash the immune system, which is a big part of the way. So we have mutations that we're blocking and we're unleashing the immune system. And that's been how we really are making significant progress in
Mm.
cancer care.
Yeah. Are there things that we as Christians can do, can better encourage to help in whether it's, people going through diseases, things of that nature, or just that we can encourage? Because I think we need more Christians, more overt Christians in science, people that are unashamed to
Yes.
say, I do believe in God, and it's because I believe in God that I want to study his creation in myriad aspects. What kind of advice would you give to Christians who are both interested in science or perhaps studying and treating diseases, just like you?
Well, I'm going to repeat my basic thing. Science, properly understood, is a revelation. There's no other explanation. I mean, if you look at each of the fundamental pieces, they're all super intelligently designed. And then to watch them work together. It was just really, I didn't realize this. It was fun for me this last 3 or 4 years ago as I started to write this book, to look at these individual things that had to happen and realize each one is from a unimaginable mind that released these, allowed them to work as a team. I had to call them blueprints. I could call them equations, but space-time requires about 20 equations.
Ah,
So I decided to just go to a blueprint. Space-time's a blueprint. Uh, but when you realize that, you think there's this incredible mind behind this universe, behind this earth, behind our DNA.
mm,
I mean, DNA is unimaginable. And I was proud of Bill Gates at Microsoft. He said, there's no way we could create an information processing system to match DNA. Good for him. I
yeah.
mean, it was just an absolutely unbelievable package storing so much information. And just think about a baby developing and different genes being activated at different times. Let's make a liver, let's build a hand. I mean, it's just always, I thought there was God behind it. But the more we learn now, I don't think there's any other good explanation than a super intelligent creator.
Hmm, that's amazing. I'm thinking of a song. I don't know if you grew up with the same hymnals I did, but there was a song called Our God, He is Alive. And the third verse, which no one ever sings the third verse, but I love it. It says, let's see, life secure, secure is life from mortal mind. God holds the germ within his hand. Though men may search, they cannot find, for God alone doth understand. And I just always have been impressed
Wonderful.
by that concept that no matter what, how deeply we study, we discover more and more complexity into how we were made, into how our, like you said, our body's ability to regulate, to remake, to investigate, to protect, to defend, to heal, like all of those things are amazing. And to me, the argument for design is unassailable. I really do think we can't look at ourselves and just think we're accidents, but philosophically and theologically, so many people do. And that has to impact every aspect of your life. I mean, if you tell generations of kids that they're nothing more than basically higher level primates, and there isn't a purpose, I don't think that it's a stretch to say that they will be looking for meaning no matter what in all the wrong places. So they'll be looking for everything to find, and they still haven't found. We all struggle with these questions, but if you tell kids that there is no purpose. You're just an accident. You're not supposed to be here. You're not, coming from anywhere. You're not going anywhere. You just have to have as much fun, eat, drink, and be merry. And there's no really other point other than happiness and personal fulfillment. So yeah, go ahead, kids, have fun. Bye. Like that is not only incredibly short-sighted, it ignores all of the evidence that says otherwise, that they are here, specifically designed for a purpose, and therefore with a
Yes.
responsibility to their creator and to other created beings, to their neighbors as well.
Yes.
And we're missing all of that. I think it does really rely on our ability to understand where we come from so we can know who we are.
Well, I think you're alluding to the greatest miracle of all, and that is our consciousness. We have higher consciousness. We can actually contemplate these things. It also means we can understand we're going to die.
Mm,
And we're the only animal that recognizes that. But consciousness is such a wonder and such a mystery. And guess what? We don't have the slightest idea where it came from.
mm.
We've had theories. There were just a recent trial of one leading theory versus the other leading theory, and basically they proved each other wrong. Neither theory, neither theory was correct. So we have this wonderful mystery. I mean, where did DNA come from? What a mystery! How beautiful it is, the molecule, and then our consciousness. And I want to make an important point. It blossomed worldwide. It, back, oh gosh, when people began to draw pictures on caves, it happened on remote islands and in jungles. God ordained that to happen, not just here and there, not just a few smart people here and there, but globally a gift. He
Mm,
created mankind in his image, men and women. And that's more than humbling. And what a gift he gave us.
mm. So if we're speaking to someone that is maybe coming around to accepting the validity of a creator or an intelligent force behind the universe, and I would say, absolutely, come on this journey with me. Let's talk about it some
Yeah.
more. But they are struggling with the idea of being responsible to a creator, or how is it that, like the religious aspect? Because I hear people that are saying, okay, I'm willing to ask the questions. There's a lot more of the vaguely spiritual or agnosticism. They're not hardcore atheists, but they'll say, you know what, I just don't know. What evidence would you share with them to say, no, actually, there is that we all didn't just come from some impersonal force, but that there is a God who can be known behind this, who cares about you specifically, who created you specifically? Can we see that in science? What would you share with them?
Well, I was so motivated about that that I actually wrote a book. It's called Sacred Science. And, you know,
Nice. Buy my book. Got it.
you got it. It's only 422 pages, you know,
Oh, that's good. That's an easy weekend.
and it goes through both the creation of the universe and then the journey of life, and then this unbelievable consciousness, near-death experiences, etc. I mean, this is a wondrous world, and I find it would be much harder to not believe in God, and I think God wants us to praise Him. I mean, I
Mm,
really do. He put us in a great position to look out at his creation, and I think he wants our praise. I mean, good God, look what you have done. Look what you've created. And I think it makes me kind of sad to think that I might not appreciate that and may not say thank you.
right. Yeah, I think there's always reasons to praise. If we look around, if we look for reasons, we were just talking about in Bible class, my personal congregation, we were talking about gratitude and the importance of gratitude, the impact of gratitude on who we are. That it's not just that God needs praise or needs, something like that from us, but that it's reality, that everything we have is a gift. And it's also good for us to have a spirit of gratitude, which is amazing. But I was thinking, Dr. West, about a really difficult conversation that I had, and I wondered if you can share some insight on this with me. I was talking with someone who had recently lost a child, and it was in that circumstance through miscarriage. And we were talking about this, and she said, "I know that God does things for a reason. I know that life is good and children are good, um, but why did He make?" Basically, why does he create this world where children die? Why does he create our biology in such a way as a good percentage, depending on the numbers, it could be anywhere between 1 in 10 and 1 in 4 or 5 children are conceived in the womb, and yet through no fault of their own, no fault of the parents, um, will not be born. They will die before they are born. How does that factor into God's good creation? And I was trying to talk and sympathize with her and commiserate with her. And it is just an incredibly difficult question. And I just wondered how you would address that when so many of us have an experience of something like that through either miscarriage or losing a child, and it's so incredibly difficult.
Well, I believe God has a plan B, a
Mm,
backup. I imagine in heaven there's an enormous number of very, very happy children that if God could create this earth, this beautiful, and I'm looking outside today, it's really pretty day.
mhm.
Imagine what heaven must be like. And I think we can trust the fact that he's going to take care of those kids. He knows he's behind them. He made them possible, and I don't think he deserts them. So I just imagine that someday, if we're blessed enough to be see the heaven, we'll find that there's lots of children there who are very happy and are being raised in the most wonderful way. And that's my belief and my hope.
Mhm. Yeah. And we can have that living hope again through resurrection. I don't know who your favorite theologian is. I found a really cool biography of D.L. Moody. And it is written in 1900. It's neat, leather bound, and I got it in a box of books for $1. So it's really hard to beat that. But I was reading it, and just overall, his discussion of death being swallowed up in victory. I would love to hear on this one from the perspective of not only a man of science, but also a man of faith. That this is what he said of his death. He said, "Someday you'll read in the papers that D.L. Moody is dead. Don't you believe a word of it. At that moment, I shall be more alive than I am now. I have gone up higher, that is all, out of this old clay tenement to a house that is immortal, that death cannot touch, that sin cannot taint. A body fashioned like his glorious body. I was born of flesh in 1837. I was born of the spirit in 1856. What is born of the flesh will die. What is born of the spirit will live forever." Now, as a man of science and a man of faith, how do you respond to that hope of resurrection?
Well, I lost my mother to breast cancer when I was 21, and she had a favorite book. It's in the bookcase right behind me. It's called Portraits of Christ in Genesis.
Hmm.
And it makes the point, and if you read it, you become a believer, that the whole Testament, the whole Old Testament is pointing the way toward Jesus. The ark is Jesus. Climb aboard the ark, have the faith, and ride out the storm.
Hmm.
So I'll match Moody with M.R. DeHaan, who was
Yeah,
also
I
a
love it.
radio. And, it's my favorite book. It's my mother's book. She had it at her bedside for the 4 years. She was smart enough to know she had too many positive notes and she was going to die, but to watch her faith and to rely on that book, it's my most precious object.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, Dr. West. Something that I think a lot of people take comfort in. It's easy from the outside looking in to look at all of us Christians and say, "Oh, you're silly, you're crazy, that you're just putting your hope and faith out there in a someday, in this imaginary force. You don't have anything to do with that." I'm like, the evidence, again, as we said, the fact that we are here and we're able to converse intelligently, reasonably intelligently, and
Yeah.
have this conscious discussion about where we come from. I think that alone in itself is evidence that we are well made, is evidence. What you point out in your book, Sacred Science, is evidence upon evidence. And I think the fact that we have this longing in our heart is also evidence. I don't see that in the rest of the natural world. I mean, I don't see the deer contemplating their meaning and looking forward to eternity. That's just, I mean,
That's right.
God made them to be deer and they glorify God as they are. But there's something special about who we are as human beings that longs to connect, that longs to find that meaning, that longs to belong. And I mean, it's the God-shaped hole that he himself is the only thing that can fill that and our relationship with him. And I love that the more you study, the deeper your faith seems to have gotten. And I do pray that many other men and women in your field will be drawn in by these questions. I am just concerned, though, that like you said, there seems to be this kind of hush hush policy, that there are certain questions we're not allowed to ask, or certain theories that we're not allowed to speak out loud. And I mean, can we have more open conversations? Do you think because of the internet age, because there's all these questions that are now kind of being envelopes being pushed and norms being challenged, is it okay to start having these conversations? And I could say, as someone who's interested in science, can we now start talking overtly about our faith, or are we still a ways off from that?
I sense a warming. It's a gradual warming, but the language of God. Uh, I'm going to, I'm going to block the name of the wonderful director of the NIH that wrote that book. But there's the lead doctor at the NIH who wrote a book on the language of God and how miraculous and wonderful and God-derived DNA is. So I think there are many more believers among the scientists than we want to admit. Uh, it's a little discouraging. We have this scientism trying to make the point that science is the only source of truth, and that is just so unacceptable that I would invite. And of course, it sounds like yes, in my book, there are 8 blueprints, and go look at each one of them, from E equals MC squared to the Higgs field that made us physical. One miraculous, necessary blueprint after another. And if you think that just popped out of the sky, well, you have a different worldview than I do. I just and I wish everybody could, and I hope perhaps partially through my book, and go look at those blueprints and say, where did that come from? Who invented
Mm-hmm.
that? Who Where did DNA come from? Did it just drift in from another planet? Actually, you know, Watson and Crick was one of the inventors of the discoveries of the shape of DNA. Before he died, he said it couldn't have happened on Earth. He thought it was flown in from outer space.
Hmm.
So these things sometimes stretch the mind of the best scientists. But just look at the blueprints that made this universe possible.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I believe the average reasonable person will come to the conclusion that there's an unimaginable mind behind this universe and behind this earth. This earth is just absolutely wonderful. That sun is a perfect distance up there. And, it gives us just what we need to support life. And I was looking at the moon last night. We have the perfect moon. And I think just this last week, they realized the moon was created at about the same time as the earth. It wasn't a late impact. It was kind of almost happened as a pair. And we need that moon, controls our tides, it controls our seasons. It's just all too good to just attribute it to luck.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you really get into those individual blueprints, you'll just see how super intelligent each one of them is. And then to realize they work as a team to build out this universe, to build out 50 billion trillion stars, and to build out this one special star with its eight planets, one very rare and one very privileged planet. There's 2 books written about Earth, the rare Earth and the privileged planet. And that's what we are. We're rare and we're privileged. And as a species, we are distinct.
I know that had my fair share of trust the science memes, follow the science. Whenever anybody talks about following the science, I sort of, have kind of the opposite conclusion. Like, I think you just want me to follow your conclusion. I think you just want me to sit down and shut up and do what you're telling me to do. And I've
Yeah,
never been good at that. I'm not that type of person. Too
right.
contrarian for my own good. But I do think that there are many legitimate ways in total sincerity that we should follow and trust the science. We should look at how well God created us. We should look at the beauty of biology. We should take closer looks at the creation all around us, from, your favorite dog that's running down the street after a squirrel, probably too loud, from the leaves that are on the trees that are outside our window. I honestly think that the more that we look at science and say, okay, where does the evidence lead? That where does
Yes.
this intention, this design, all of the interconnectedness working together, the equations that are far too complex for me to be solving on whiteboards. But I think it's so amazing. I also wonder that, we're not outside in creation very much anymore. So many of us live in constructed habitats that are mostly artificial, and we're looking through windows instead of going out and exploring the physical realm. I think more that, not that you can't do science in other ways too, but I think I've been trying to get our kids outside more, and just in my own basic way, looking at the beauty of nature and of animals and of water and grass and skies and trees. And that ignites a wonder in us. And that if science has
Yes.
to begin with anything, it should begin with that wonderment, that I wonder how, I wonder if, there has to be a reason for this. How can we test it? How can we find out? And that's the spirit of truly of the believer that seeks to know more about God through his creation. So again, far from being incompatible, that wonder, I think, is the missing component that will lead science-minded individuals and seeking curious individuals to say, I wonder how, I wonder who.
It was one of the happiest moments of my life when I actually, and it took time. It took me, and I've read a lot of science, a lot of literature, to say, okay, now I want to understand the tools of creation. How did God do this? And to look at each one of them and see how magnificent each one of them is, and to realize that's no accident.
Mm.
This field that fills the universe and encodes our atoms with mass, really. Um, the interchangeability equals MC squared. Space-time. Nobody understands space-time. We really, are we living in a hologram? That's a serious scientific question. And there's so much wonder and mystery about each of these blueprints that you know uh, one of my favorite is a little something called a W particle, that when clouds of hydrogen gas start to form a star, this little W particle, the, the strong nuclear force holds two protons together, and a little W particle kicks into one of them, makes it a neutron, and creates deuterium.
Mm,
And then again creates tritium. And all of a sudden we have the fuel for the star. That's what fuses deuterium and tritium.
okay.
And 0.07% of the starting mass comes back at us as sunshine. Oh, accident? I don't think so. I think that's unbelievable, wondrous design.
Find out more at Sacred Science. I will put that link down below, Dr. West's book. It's well worth a read. Like he said, it's only 400 pages. It won't take too long.
No big deal.
It, just a
Lots
few.
of illustrations.
Oh, see, that's what I need. Like, I did pass a chemistry course at one time, but it
Good.
was mostly because I could draw everything, all of the different particles. I
Good
can
for
put all
you.
the atoms together.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I admire the depth of thought that you've put into this and the research that is there. That this will, I pray, draw many more people to ask those questions. Like, how did I get here? How do we, well, to at least consider a different perspective, which is what science is all about, is to start asking true questions. And for us on the believing side to be able to further understand, to praise, to get to know the God of this amazing universe, and that our faith is not in the absence of evidence. It is, in fact, the evidence of things not seen. And we can draw
Yeah.
from all those things that are clearly seen, that act in an orderly, predictable, amazing way, much like our creator. Thank you very much, Dr. West.
Thank you. Real pleasure to be with you.
It's wonderful to have you, and I can't wait to discover more about science and to be able to challenge and ask some of the, well, maybe simple questions to you, but challenging to me. And at every different level, through God's grace, we can understand more about who He is and ask those questions. That's so much of what I love, because the stereotype is that faith is just blindly accepting whatever you're told, and that's not, a rational or thinking kind of person can't get behind that bus. And it's actually the opposite. It's that the deeper that you seek to go, God withstands all questioning. God's not
Yes.
afraid of our questions. In fact, He says, "Come to me. I'll show you deep and wonderful things that you
Yeah.
cannot understand." And
Hey,
it's an amazing invitation, and it inspires. So, as you're listening to this, if you've been inspired, check out Sacred Science. And I'd love to continue this conversation with you. To let us know in the comments what you found interesting, the questions you still have, and let's keep this going. Until next time, this is FaithWorks Live, where we have a threefold mission, which is to love God, to serve people, and to live free. At FaithWorks Live, we're proud to partner with InnerVision's Healthcare. In unplanned pregnancy and STD situations, they offer help and hope. It's all confidential, and it's all free. If women are in a crisis pregnancy situation, they know that they can get real help at InnerVision's. Free pregnancy testing, free STD testing, free ultrasounds as well, to see that inner vision. Because women deserve the truth about their bodies, about their baby, about all of their options. And if a woman has gone down the road of seeking abortion through medication and she regrets that decision, InnerVisions also offers abortion pill reversal procedure, which is a life-saving, miraculous option to have right here in our own community. InnerVisions Healthcare, well worth supporting, providing those free services to women in crisis pregnancy. You can call them 24 hours a day at 515-440-2273. That's 515-440-2273. There's no better time than now to stand for life. And you can stand with Iowa's original pro-life organization, Pulse for Life. They're the longest standing nonprofit pro-life organization in Iowa, and they're dedicated to informing, educating, and inspiring a new generation to value the sanctity of all human life, from fertilization until natural death. They serve at the State House. They educate in classrooms, at events. They proudly serve on the coalition of pro-life leaders. They are on the front lines of the battle against this throwaway culture of death that we see all around us, and we are winning ground. Hearts and minds are changing, and the pro-life movement is continuing to grow. And you can be a part of the exciting things that are happening right here in our own backyard at pulseforlife.org, and get your finger on the pro-life pulse. Sign up for their newsletter, find ways that you can make a difference, and how you can change hearts and minds with their pro-life apologetics course, pulseforlife.org.